The Office of the Attorney General is one of the most important offices in this state. It handles every legal issue for the state of Colorado, from antitrust to water law. It handles representing the state officials, defending every criminal conviction that occurs in district courts throughout the state. And I have had the honor for 30 years to work with every attorney general and to know everybody running for the office. I will tell you, the two gentlemen running this year take backseats to no one. They are extraordinarily qualified. First, having won the joint coin toss, I'll introduce Mr. Brauchler. George Brauchler is a Colorado native. He has won multiple elections as the district attorney for the largest judicial district in the state of Colorado. He is a United States veteran, a current colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. He's been mobilized twice since 9/11. George Brauchler. Phil Weiser began his professional career as a Supreme Court law clerk, something we've been hearing a lot of recently, for two Supreme Court justices, Colorado's own Byron White and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. He has served as counsel to the President of the United States in the Obama years and has served as Dean of the University of Colorado School of Law, which happens to be my alma mater and Mr. Brauchler's alma mater, Phil Weiser. I want to welcome the audience, and I want to especially thank the candidates for coming here and talking to us here in Western Colorado. I think you're going to find this a spirited debate. I want to remind everyone that, of course, the enthusiasm and limited applause is allowed, and it's appreciated. However, disruptions and certainly rudeness are not allowed and not tolerated. And let me tell you, the one sanction that I can impose is taking time away from one of the candidates if his supporters gets out of hand. And if you want to see a lawyer get mad, just take away time that he gets to bend our ears. So let's show the hospitality that Western Colorado is so famous for. Unruly individuals will actually be escorted out of the room, and no noisemakers will be allowed in here. I think you're going to find the candidates focused on ideas, on why they should be the Attorney General, not why someone should not be. We're going to begin with opening remarks. We had a coin toss. Mr. Brauchler won the toss. He has chosen to go first. So, George Brauchler.
Thank you. 46 years ago, a farm girl and a city boy who met during Vietnam and started their lives in government-subsidized housing on the East Coast made the decision to come west to start their family. They found it here in Colorado, a land at the time that was of opportunity, community, liberty, and despite its great diversity, unity. I'm the oldest of the three kids that were the product of that marriage. My name is George Brauchler, and I'm running for Attorney General for our state because the state I'm about to turn over to my own 4 great children is remarkably different from the one that I inherited from my parents more than 45 years ago. I want to tell you that the Attorney General's office has 3 30,000-foot big jobs. One is to defend Coloradans through the enforcement of our laws, rules, and regulations. It is a protector of our great state, its beauty, its water in particular. And it is a guardian of our laws and our Constitution. And I have spent my entire life as a defender, a protector, and a guardian. Now, anybody that comes up here and stands up here and says, I want the job of being the chief enforcer of Colorado's laws, you should demand to know what experience they have in their background. Now, I'm a middle-class kid from Colorado, grew up in Lakewood, went to public school my entire life. I took an Army ROTC scholarship to the most military-friendly school in the state of Colorado. Anyone? CU Boulder. CU Boulder, baby. You got it right there. Not that friendly, but you get it. I came back for law school there. I became a prosecutor. I met my wife, a small business owner who started her business in our living room 18 years ago. We have 4 terrific kids together, a 15-year-old daughter. You can pray for me. That's okay. She's going to take over the world. And 3 great boys, 14, 11, and 8. I am also the district attorney For the most populous jurisdiction in the state of Colorado, 1 million people, it is the most diverse jurisdiction between the Mississippi and the Pacific Ocean. And I can brag all day long, and hopefully I'll get a chance to, about the great things that we've done. But I'm also an Army colonel. I have mobilized twice since 11th, including being deployed to Iraq as the Chief of Military Justice for Northern Iraq. Now, I have been a defense attorney. As a defense attorney, I beat my own office. I mean, how awesome is that? A defense attorney, a prosecutor. I've been a civil plaintiff's lawyer, a civil defense lawyer. I've been a military prosecutor, a military defense attorney. I've handled administrative rules and regulations in the Army on the civilian side. I have tried cases at every single level, municipal, state, federal, and military. Elect me as your Attorney General, and you will get all of that experience, all of that leadership, and my very best. Thank you. Look forward to a good debate. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Now Phil Weiser will have 3 minutes to make his opening remarks.
Hello, Club 20. I am honored to be here as a member back in Grand Junction, building on relationships that go back during my time as Dean of CU Law School, because I'm committed to being a lawyer for every Coloradan. This office is the office of the people, to protect the rights of all Coloradans, whether it's your water rights, access to health care, your rights as a consumer, or your rights as a citizen to be free from discrimination. We're at a moment right now that we need our state government to be there for us. It is a challenging time in our democracy, but we in Colorado, we can show the whole nation how it's done. Take water, for example. I had the chance to visit with Joe Zemba in Crowley County and talk about what happened in Crowley County. When you buy and dry and you shut down an agricultural economy. We're facing a challenging time right now on the Colorado River, which is why we need our Attorney General to be an innovator and a leader to bring people together to solve problems. I have the chance to talk to Matt in Glenwood Springs about the opioid epidemic, destroying lives and communities. I'll represent you, and I'll take on those pharmaceutical companies who lied to people, made money. They now have to be held accountable. We'll take that money and we'll get drug treatment across our whole state. Because right now, 92% of the people in the Alamosa County Jail are drug users, opioid addicts, and the sheriff there says, I can't help them. We can do better here in Colorado. And Honey in Alamosa talked to me about health care and her concern that our right to protect people against discrimination if they have pre-existing conditions, that's at stake right now. Because our federal government is trying to undermine that protection. But we in Colorado care about each other. And I will be a lawyer on behalf of all the people. My career has been one of service, starting at the Supreme Court, working at the Justice Department under 2 presidents, working for President Obama in the White House on technology innovation, and leading CU Law School. I've got a wide range of experience, like prior Attorney Generals like Ken Salazar, Cynthia Kaufman, and Gail Norton, to represent our whole state on a wide range of issues. Because we in Colorado, we care about protecting rights. We care about looking after each other. I want to be an Attorney General who's here for all Coloradans. Democracy cannot be a spectator sport. I thank you all for being here, getting informed. I encourage you to spread the word. We're in a challenging time, but I'm optimistic because that's the way I was raised. My family came to this nation after surviving the Holocaust because they believed in our nation's commitment to freedom and opportunity for all. That's what I stand for, and that's what I'll fight for as your Attorney General.
Thank you, Phil. Each candidate will be asked to respond to 6 questions from our panel. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. The candidate who goes first on the question will have an opportunity to offer a 30-second rebuttal to the other candidate's response to that particular question. The candidate that went first in the opening remarks, which is George, will offer the first response to the first question, which is coming from Brad. Clear as mud, right?
Gentlemen, considering that you both mentioned water in your opening statements, this first question seems very appropriate. To start with George, the rivers in western Colorado provide more than 3/4 of the state's water. but more than three-fourths of the state's population resides on the east of the Continental Divide. How do you balance the multiple demands of the Front Range for more water for its development and its booming economy, the needs of western Colorado to retain its water for agriculture, ranching, and recreation, the environment, and the downstream demands of other states?
George?
Thank you. Anybody in this room understands that Colorado's water is the lifeblood of our state. We are a headwater state. That the western slope for far too long has had too much water taken from it to go to the Front Range. One of the things that the Attorney General does is to defend our water compacts. There's 9 of them. Our other agreements that dictate the water in our state. And I will tell you as Attorney General, I will fight to defend them. I will not renegotiate our compacts because we can't do better. But when it comes to western slope water, the key is twofold. One, we got to tell Southern California they can't act like they don't need to go through any changes and keep drawing from Meade and from Powell. And when it comes to the Front Range, we can't conserve our way out of this problem, but by golly, we need to do more conservation and we need to do more storage. Those are policies. But as AG, I can enforce the law and defend the compacts for western state water. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Phil, 1 minute.
There's no issue more important to the future of Colorado than water, and there's nothing more important to me to avoid a divide between rural, urban, east, and west. We're in this together, all of us in Colorado, and it's not like one part of the state can be asked to sacrifice because we're one state. And what I want to bring to the Attorney General's office is collaborative and innovative leadership, because starting next January, we got to work on the guidelines around the Colorado River Compact. Those guidelines will help us manage our water. We have to have regulations and understandings that support them through a collaborative framework. The job of the Attorney General in water is super important. I will sit on the Colorado Water Conservation Board. I'll be the lawyer for a range of entities as we manage water with conservation, with reuse and storage. And we've got to find ways to do all of them as well as we can and fairly. I want Colorado to be a leader internationally on water management, and we can do that.
Thank you, Phil. George, 30 seconds.
Look, I think that the thing that you don't want to lose sight of as we go through these questions is the Attorney General is not a policymaker. The legislature is. The governor may be. But we don't let judges and we don't let attorneys dictate policies for the state, especially for water. I will defend our water compacts, and I will make sure that environmental elitists don't deprive us of the storage that we need to build in the future on the Front Range to provide the water, not just for here, but to make sure it's also on the plains as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The second question, initially for Phil, comes from Bob.
Phil, the Attorney General is responsible for directing more than 200 attorneys providing legal services for the state of Colorado on issues ranging from water law to transportation, criminal appeals, environmental protection, regulatory affairs, civil litigation, and constitutional issues. In your opinion, what are the 3 biggest issues facing the Attorney General's office and the state of Colorado, and what will you do to address these issues?
When I announced my campaign, I started with 3 broad themes. I'll be a lawyer to protect everyone's equal rights under law, to make sure everyone's treated fairly, and to protect our land, air, and water. Let me give you a word, and only a word, about each. First, equal rights under law. We in Colorado do not tolerate discrimination based on what you look like, who you love, or where you live. I will fight for that as your Attorney General. We in Colorado insist on fair play and that everyone is treated with respect, with dignity, and honestly. For companies who are irresponsible, like those pharmaceutical companies like Purdue Pharma, I will hold them accountable, and I'll stand up for all Coloradans. And we treasure clean air, clean water, and our public lands. As your Attorney General, I will lead this office to do that, to protect our way of life for our next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. George, 1 minute.
You can't get past the first topic that we covered as number one, and that is water. That has to be a focal point for the Front Range, and it hasn't been up till now. On the Front Range, water issues are if I turn on my tap and clean drinkable water comes out, are we good to go? And so the priority for an Attorney General for the entire state of Colorado has to take that into consideration and make sure that water issues matter the same across the board. 2, federal overreach. For far too long, you don't have to look too far, 1,500 miles away into the swamp, regardless of administration, to see that we do better governing ourselves than some bureaucrats way over there who don't live here, don't know us, and don't care about our families and our culture. And number 3, public safety. You and I both know that crime is on the rise, and whether it's black market marijuana, opioid addiction, methamphetamine, heroin, violent crime, gun crime, those are things that can be tackled by a leader who's been there, done that, and taken that experience to the statewide level. I will protect Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Phil, 30-second rebuttal.
Our federal government must follow the rule of law. And part of protecting opportunities and fair treatment is being a check on a federal government that violates the rule of law, such as the Affordable Care Act. It requires that all of us are treated fairly and can't be discriminated against if you've got pre-existing conditions. Well, right now, our federal Justice Department isn't backing us. It's not protecting this important law. We have a check on federal government behavior that's lawless. It's our Attorney General's office. I'll be that check.
Thank you. Third question comes from Rick for George.
Thank you. If the voters of Colorado enacted a controversial law on a subject like abortion or illegal immigration that was vehemently opposed by the base of your political party or by you personally, would you zealously defend the constitutionality of that law?
George.
It's a good question. This question gets to the heart of what a good Attorney General is, and that is a defender of the law, not their own ideological whims or their own political objectives. Now, as long as the qualification for that question is that that law that gets passed is also constitutional, then yes, bless you, independent of my views of that law and whether I agree or not, I will defend the will of the voters of the state of Colorado. Best example is Amendment 64. I didn't want it in our Constitution. I didn't want to be the first state to do it, but guess what? 55% of us put it in our Constitution. And as a district attorney that took over the same time the marijuana became legal, and I don't think there's a connection there, by the way, it just happened like that, I will tell you I have spent my time enforcing the spirit of the will of Coloradans while going after those parts that attack it, the black market parts that seem to be everywhere in rural Colorado and in upper middle class homes. I will defend the will of the people of the state of Colorado.
Thank you, George. I gave you 2 extra seconds for blessing the sneezer. Phil.
George, bless you and that answer.
Does he get 2 for that?
Exactly. Because this is really important, and I want to double down on what George said. If you're the Attorney General, you're the lawyer for the people of Colorado and all the executive branches. Something that's happened recently that really troubles me is we've had an Attorney General that hasn't always been willing to provide legal advice to an executive branch if there was a difference of ideology. And that's wrong. If Walker Stapleton's our governor, I'm going to be the best lawyer for him, giving him the best legal advice I can. We may have differences on policy. So did Ken Salazar and Bill Owens. But Ken Salazar was committed to giving high-quality legal advice. I will do that. If there's a moment, however, where a governor or legislature wants to violate the Constitution, you have a duty to enforce that higher law. Ken Salazar did that, stopping an unconstitutional gerrymander. That's what the role of the Attorney General is.
George, 30-second rebuttal.
Now listen, we get asked these questions a lot, and that is how will you work across the aisle if for some reason Jared Polis is able to eke out a victory here, let's say, and becomes the governor. And I've said that my answer is the same regardless of who it is, Walker or Jared. I'm not going to stand between you and a lawful constitutional policy. In fact, I'll give you the advice to help you accomplish it. But if you try to do something that is violative of our laws or our Constitution, as expressed by the will of the people or the legislature, you should expect me to be an impediment to that attempt, and that is independent of party. Thank you.
Thank you. The fourth question from Brad for Phil.
Often, Western Colorado looks at issues differently than the Front Range.
Thanks.
And former attorneys general of both parties, such as Gail Norton and Ken Salazar, have selected attorneys from the Western Slope to serve in the top ranks of their office. How would you ensure that you have the perspective of Western Colorado and rural Colorado as you make decisions that impact those areas?
Phil?
Let me offer a few thoughts. First, if I can convince Russ George to come join the AG's office, done. Right? Don't we love Russ George? Second, I want to hire attorneys in local areas. So I talked to Tim Foster at CMU about this. Right now, there's a lawyer for CMU who's in Denver. Why can't we have that lawyer work at CMU? Why can't we have a lawyer in Glenwood Springs working on water? We're in the 21st century. People can telecommute. They will when I'm Attorney General. Thank you. But more than that, it's about showing up. It's about building relationships all across our state. That's something that I will continue to do. I've done it when I was dean, coming here regularly to Grand Junction, getting lawyers placed in Montrose for the first time ever, going to Durango, going to Pueblo. That's the type of Attorney General I'll be. One for the whole state with relationships everywhere, who shows up and who listens.
Thank you, Phil. George.
Listen, we still subscribe to this 1860s model of state government where every agency seems to have to be a horse and buggy ride away from the Capitol just in case the governor calls for tea. We don't need to do that anymore in 2018. Even when I was in Tikrit, I could still have broken conversations with my kids on their birthdays over Skype. What I propose to do is bolder than telecommuting. It is to put regional offices for the Attorney General's office out in different parts of the state that are underserved, like the Western Slope. And sure, it could be, keep it going. It could be, I'll give you, it could be an attorney for education. It could be prosecution help. It could be investigators to help these resources, these poor resourced law enforcement agencies to tackle bigger black market marijuana projects or opioids or methamphetamine, or tackle the lower environmental crimes that don't get the attention of the EPA or the Attorney General's office yet. You need to have an Attorney General's office that you can walk to or drive to, not have to spend all day to get to. And that's how I'll get the perspective of this side of the mountains and the other side as well. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Phil, rebuttal.
So branch offices are a great 20th century solution. Telecommuting and a distributed workforce is a better 21st century solution. In a world where people have access to broadband, they can live in lots of communities. Craig, Colorado, Sterling, Colorado. With branch offices, you have to limit to just a few. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure we engage our whole state. And I want to build relationships around our whole state. That's what matters to be an Attorney General for all the people of Colorado.
Thank you, Phil. The fifth question comes from Bob for George.
George, Club 20 supports an all-of-the-above energy policy. If elected Attorney General, what will you do to ensure that all of our energy sectors have the freedom to operate without damaging the local environment?
Great question, especially for an area that recognizes more than many others how important oil and gas development and exploration is. We have seen in this state over the past few years too much of a trend to try to destroy oil and gas in favor of something that is more ideological pleasing. And that's what you get when people pledge to you by 2040 we're going to flick the lights off on oil and gas and go all renewable. Now we right now have the most stringent regulations for oil and gas in the United States of America, and that is working. What we can't do is keep coming back to the ballot box every 2 years with efforts like 97, which is 112 now, that try to seek to put a half mile's distance around every single part of Colorado to kill off energy. Now, I want to have a renewable world. Believe me, I like the idea of wind and solar, but when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, I like to be able to turn on the lights in my house and walk around at night. And we're going to keep doing that as I continue to defend our laws in the state of Colorado. Thank you very much.
Phil.
We in Colorado are showing our nation how you develop energy of all kinds and protect our land, air, and water. When we had to answer the question, how do we manage methane emissions, which contribute to climate change and harm human health, we got together with the oil and gas industry and environmentalists, and we came up with a national model. It was so good, the EPA adopted our model to protect people's public health and to allow the industry to operate effectively. And the industry has embraced those rules. But something odd happened. Our Attorney General fought against the rules that the EPA adopted that we developed here in Colorado. And then when Scott Pruitt took over, he wanted to put an end to those rules. And our Attorney General refused to represent Colorado. Our governor, who helped develop them, had to hire outside counsel. We need an Attorney General committed to both enabling responsible energy, but also protecting the public health and our land, air, and water. I'll do that as your Attorney General.
Thank you, Phil. George, rebuttal.
What we need is an Attorney General who will defend the sovereignty of the state of Colorado. And the fact that we came up with a great idea that the federal government then wanted to adopt and force upon us, an Attorney General for Colorado defends Colorado's sovereignty, especially if we want to change those rules. An Attorney General is the one that looks out for Colorado's air and water and environment, and we don't cede that responsibility to bureaucrats 1,500 miles from here. I will not turn over responsibility for this state to Washington, D.C.
Thank you. The final question comes from Rick for Phil initially.
This is a two-part question. There is currently a referred measure that would change the state's definition to match the federal definition of industrial hemp. If elected, you plan to advocate for the federal change to the Schedule 1 status of hemp? And how will the AG's office defend Colorado's hemp farmers against federal overreach?
So this is an important point. The word federal overreach gets used a bit. George just used it. Let me make a point on it. The methane rule protected us from the surrounding states' methane emissions, which are 2/3 of the methane emissions we get. So we needed that rule, and our oil and gas companies, they were already complying with it. So that wasn't an overreach, that was protection. On the hemp front, efforts to limit hemp, it's an overreach because we have a sovereign right under the 10th Amendment. And we want to allow marijuana legal. We should have hemp legal as well. It is a great product. It can use less water. It can give great opportunities to farmers. And it can be part of the 21st century economy here in Colorado. And I'll fight for that every way I can. And that includes against our federal government.
Thank you, Phil. George.
I love to hear you talk about the 10th Amendment, man. I'm a big fan. Look, when it comes to hemp, I agree that this is a crop that we should continue to explore, especially as other agricultural crops, especially on the plains, begin to suffer. Because of water use, we have to worry about things like fallowing ground. These may be the best opportunity that we have to keep farmers flush with cash and providing us with the products that we need. But let me say this, it's not without a risk. From a public safety standpoint, and I know this, the amount of active THC that appears in hemp is very, very difficult to consistently regulate and get right. And so the concern is, especially in an environment where we have shown ourselves thus far to struggle to keep up with the professionalized black market marijuana grows that are out there, we may be inviting further illegal THC production through this. If we can lick that part of it, if we can whip that into shape, then I think we go to Corey, we go to Michael, we say, hey, get something on the books and let us be in charge of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And rebuttal.
I'm going to be very definite. I'm all in. I'm for the initiative. It's important for our economy and our future. And I also believe we in Colorado, we can manage this regulatory challenge, this law enforcement challenge. We're doing it with marijuana. There's work to be done. We can do it with hemp. We are a leader. We are innovators. That's who we are, and that's why we'll pioneer hemp.
Thank you, Phil. That concludes the Q&A portion of the debate. I really want to thank Brad McLeod, Bob Murphy, Rick Carmine. Would you please join me in thanking them for that? And now we move into one more entertaining aspects of the debate, the cross-examination, where each candidate will be given 4 minutes to ask questions directly to his opponent, and will pretty much control the questioning. Candidate Phil Weiser will begin the cross-examination of George Brauchler. Phil.
George, I'm supporting Initiative 126, which caps payday lending rates at 36%, reducing it from the current of 129. Yes or no? Are you with me on supporting this initiative?
I'm not sure that's an AG question. That feels like a policy question. I'd like to look more into it. I don't want to see predatory lenders get the better of any consumers.
So it sounds like you're not ready to commit.
When we cap something and not let it have the flexibility of going through the economy or legislative change, I want to look at it more.
Next question. You have said before, including I think last month, that the AG's office doesn't have a role to help on rural broadband. Is that your position?
I've said that is a policy decision for the legislature and for the governor, yes.
Do you know what Club 20 said in their technology resolution by any chance?
I have no doubt in my mind that Club 20 is a huge proponent of rural broadband, as am I. But unless you're going to carry it out on your back and lay the cable yourself, the AG doesn't have that role, my man.
All right, so does an AG... Well, let's go into that. Does the AG's office have a role helping with contracts for public-private partnerships?
To review contracts? Absolutely they do, yeah.
Do they have a role helping support local communities on easements and land use regulations?
To review the legality of those things? Absolutely.
And emergency communications?
Sure, to review the contracts related to that? Yes.
Okay. Do you have any experience in those areas?
I have reviewed contracts as a private attorney, that's for sure, for even my own business as well as my wife's business. Yeah, I've done contracts before.
Not in broadband. All right.
No broadband.
No broadband.
I've only used it.
There you go. You, before, have been quoted as saying you believe Roe versus Wade should be overturned. If this issue is before the Supreme Court, what position would you take for Colorado?
I don't think the AG has a role in this, and two, I have not said that. What I have said is I am pro-life, and that I do not expect the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade, whether Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed or not, but that the Attorney General of the state of Colorado maybe files an amicus, but doesn't have a role to play in that particular argument.
So there's this Elbert County Republican questionnaire where I think you said the results of Roe versus Wade are wrong and do not make us a better people. I believe Roe versus Wade was decided based on a claimed right that was interpreted from, not expressed in the Constitution. Did you say that? Is that still your view?
If that's in there, that is correct, but that's not the same thing as seeking to have it overturned. I disagree with Roe versus Wade because I think this is a matter that should be going to the states. But the Supreme Court ruled differently, and now I'll embrace that law.
But if it's before the Supreme Court in an amicus brief, what would you do?
I'd have to think about that, what I would do.
Next question. Next question. So the question of rights for LGBTQ individuals is a big one. You've been quoted before as saying having openly gay people in the military is like having kids in a candy shop. Is that a view you hold?
No, what you're quoting is something that interestingly just came back up after 11 years and multiple times being asked about this on the campaign trail for DA. Something that was said on a radio show back and forth, and it was about the Navy specifically. It wasn't about all the military. And I have said since that time that, and I regret that comment. It was a mistake. It's not anything that I have said since, and it's not anything I would say again in the future.
Did you subsequently say this in a letter to the editor after this?
I have no idea what I said 11 years ago.
Okay. Last question, a very important one. What's the best TV show ever in your view?
I'm a big Seinfeld fan, and I go back, big Seinfeld fan.
Thank you.
All right. So I just want to be clear for the record. You would not say The Wire is the best TV show ever.
I love The Wire, but there's not enough episodes to compete with Seinfeld.
Okay. Thank you.
And we stop. Thank you. Now candidate George Brauchler will have 4 minutes to ask questions of Phil Weiser.
Phil, do you know the score of today's CU-Nebraska game?
You know, the last time I looked, CU was a little bit behind.
Do you know the outcome and the score, my man?
So I only checked. CU won. They pulled it out.
Sounds like no.
Nicely done.
33 to 28. Woo! Go Buffs, baby. Give it up, man. You got a little Buffs.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. Right there. All right, now listen. The role of the Attorney General sometimes brings you into conflict with the governor and brings you into disagreement with the governor, and you may have to take a position that's contrary to their policy goals and objectives. Can you name a policy of Jared Polis's that you disagree with?
Let me make a couple points on this because I've got a couple I want to mention.
You get one.
Here's my big
question.
Here's my big one, but I'll give you my bonus one too. My big one is blockchain. Jared is pushing super hard on blockchain, and if we get too far out front, this could really hurt consumers. And I'm all for innovation.
Got it. Blockchain. What's the next one?
I'm committed when I'm Attorney General.
No, it's George's time.
Next question or next one?
No, I'll take a second one. Give us blockchain is one of your big ones. What's the
my
other one?
second one is I'm going to create as Attorney General a Chief Innovation Officer and Chief Diversity Officer. He hasn't made that commitment. I'd like him to.
Those are the two big differences you have with Jared Polis.
That was my bonus one.
Okay, those are the two big ones. Got it. The Clean Power Plan. Many out here recognize that had that been implemented, it would have destroyed jobs and had a negative impact on this particular community and economy. Our Attorney General stood up against the Clean Power Plan. You derided her for it and said she shouldn't have done it. Do you believe the Clean Power Plan should have been imposed on these people?
Here's what we did in Colorado. We mapped our way to an energy future that we are limiting our emissions of carbon. So the Clean Power Plan was sleeves off our vest. We in Colorado were comfortably compliant, and other states that weren't would have to get compliant. So just like the methane rule, we're better off when states around us have to comply. I'm yes. That's my
yes,
position.
you opposed and want a Clean Power Plan on here. I got it. Martinez case sought to redefine how the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission defined certain terms and the way that they prioritize things in a way that would have slowed down, if not shut down, oil and gas permitting and exploration. Our Attorney General stood up for the law and appealed that case, not because she wanted to, but because her client said that she should by a unanimous public vote. You derided her for it and opposed it. As AG, if it's still around, and it probably won't be, would you withdraw the appeal or would you continue to fight for the state?
Let me talk about this Martinez case and why it's so problematic. The Colorado Oil and Gas Commission has authority to consider the public health, safety, and welfare. And she read that out of the law and told the commission they had no authority to consider the petition. That was wrong of her. The Court of Appeals said so, and I'd stand by that decision.
We have a Supreme Court. You would not pursue that appeal the way it is right now to the Supreme Court.
I would not pursue the appeal.
You would withdraw it.
It's going to be decided by then, but
I get it. But if it's
around,
not, you let it
take it back.
You will let a 2-1 decision of some robes decide for us what the policy of the state should be.
Let's be clear. The decision is only that the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission has the authority to consider the petition, and I think they should be allowed to consider it because the public health, safety, and welfare are part of our laws, and the Attorney General gave bad legal advice on that issue.
2 last questions on qualifications, my man. Fair to say you have never, ever set foot in a courtroom to do a trial in Colorado or for any other matter other than maybe a tour. Fair? True?
I have argued several appeals here in Colorado.
In Colorado courts?
In the court here in Colorado.
In a federal court?
10th Circuit Court of Appeals here in Colorado.
But you've done nothing in Colorado courts.
And that's a court I've argued before.
And
absolutely.
Is it fair to say you have never practiced Colorado law at any time?
No.
Okay, we're done. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed with your guys' ability to follow the clock. I was like,
you're like a judge.
Close. I'm trying to get through this without you guys realizing I don't have contempt power, though. So each candidate has 3 minutes to present closing remarks. Phil Weiser will go first.
We've had a great discussion here about what it means to be the lawyer for the people of Colorado. protect our rights on a range of issues. As a citizen, equal protection of the law means that women should have access to birth control and the choice to have an abortion. It means regardless of who you love, you're entitled to equal treatment under the law. Everyone needs to be treated fairly. Their rights matter. As a healthcare consumer, we'll stand up when our federal government won't allow us access to healthcare if we have a pre-existing condition, because we're Coloradans and we care about each other. And those drug companies who lied to people, made a whole bunch of money, they'll be held accountable, will win that lawsuit, and support drug treatment across our whole state. And we cannot let ourselves be pitted against each other. Inaction, delay, they're not our friends. On water, we work together. We can be the innovators who set an international model, because with climate change, water is a challenge everywhere. And we can be pioneers here, and we will be, and I'll lead on that issue. And I want to end by commending George, because we need more civil discourse. There's too much insults in our politics. There's too little discussion of substance. We in Colorado, we believe in working issues out. Here in Grand Junction, I know people argue with each other. They don't always agree, but they listen. And by listening, we can learn, and we can find creative solutions. And after I'm Attorney General, I look forward to working with George on a range of issues, from criminal justice reform to how we make marijuana legal in a way that's safe and respects public safety. Because we in Colorado are at our best when we work together. Yes, that's right. And finally, on a note of personal privilege, so many of you came here from all across Western Colorado. I am so appreciative. You don't know what it's like to be a candidate. George and I can tell you, it's really hard. We've traveled all across the state. I've been to every single county. And in every single county, I learned something. And all the people I learned from, we're detailing those stories on our website. And you're here listening and learning. We need our democracy to work. The only ways it works is people listening and learning from each other on the important substantive issues facing Colorado. That's who we are, and that's why we'll be a model for the nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. George?
Some people have said that they made the decision to run for this office based on who's in the White House. But I made the decision to run for this office based on who's in Colorado. And that's my family, your family, and our future. Everything that's important to me in my life is right here. And I don't need to look to the west to California or to the east to New York or Washington, D.C. for guidance on how to lead and protect this state. Now, when you talk about hiring an attorney for your personal lives, let alone for the state of Colorado, you want to know, what has that person done? And there is a stark difference in Colorado between words and action. And I have spent my entire adult life in action. Whether it's as the district attorney for the largest judicial district in the state by population, 1 million people, creating a domestic violence unit where we had none. Could have talked about it, did something about it. Human trafficking, could have talked about it, created a team that got the largest human trafficking sentence in the history of the United States, 472 years. We could talk about what to do about drugs and addiction, or we could have a robust recovery court that diverts people out of prison to go through rehabilitation. We have a cold case unit. These are things that I have done in just this one position, because it's not about words, it's about action. Now, to be an attorney general for the entire state means not just getting around during the campaign season, it means putting this government in the places where you are, where you can access it, where you can have the most influence over it. And as we head forward into those issues yet unknown for the state of Colorado, you know these things about me. I will resist federal overreach no matter who is in the White House. It could be Obama, Trump, or whoever comes after. You know that I will put our families and our communities first, and I will not substitute some ideological objective or political point scoring or even reliance on a party to do the right thing. I will follow your directions through the laws that we pass on each other and our Constitution. From the courtrooms of Colorado to the deserts of Iraq, I have spent my adult life standing up for what I thought was right and putting everything I have on the line, now and in the future, to fight for our rights, to stand up for the little guy. And so as the son of a champion for civil rights, one of the chief investigators for the Office of Civil Rights, I tell you, I am the anti-bully bully. And whether that comes from the federal government, an over-oppressive state government, whether it comes from some over-anxious company that tries to steal from us, I will be a fighter for you. I will be your champion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Thanks, man. Thanks,